Optic molds are used by glassblowers to create textures and patterns in blown glass. Nowadays, most optic molds are made from aluminum, but in the good old days, they were often made from cast bronze. They come in different shapes and sizes, depending on their desired effect. To begin, a bubble is formed and is shaped into the rough contour of the inside of the optic mold. The bubble is then heated, inserted into the mold, and blown with force. The resulting bubble can then be shaped into whatever form the artist desires. Today we're going to make an optic twist cup. So the bubble is held at the end while the pipe is rolled on the bench. This creates a spiraling pattern in the glass. The cup is blown to form, puntied up on the bottom, trimmed, and then opened up.
The first thing I developed was the hat form. That was one of the most obvious sort of glass-blown things, because we all make bowls that, flare out like that. If you flip it upside down, it's a hat. So it became sort of a canvas for transferring a design onto the glass. And what I didn't even realize and discovered purely by accident was, we placed this hat form under a light, coming directly down. All of a sudden these shadows appeared, underneath the bowl, and it's like a perfect registration of the design in a shadow form. And so I like to think of that as almost like a spirit within the piece. I guess I got a lot of recognition for what I was doing as, being a Native American artist. And at that time there just wasn't very many people doing it. And that maybe planted the seed in my head, to sort of maybe connect it in the end with my cultural roots. It was a real evolution from my glassblowing skills to the designing skills and trying to make it look like Northwest Coast art. I really had to reinvent myself in terms of understanding the design work. And the deeper I got into that, the more I realized I needed to learn. I started taking workshops with other people who were teaching the form line style. I had to really kind of understand the context of the designs and how they related to the mythologies. The salmon piece is going to be, we'll sculpt this form, and then after the piece is cooled, then I'll add this kind of a design work. This is kind of stylized Northwest Coast design. I have a natural connection to glass, because I've been doing it for 35 years. And I really wanted to just see how far I could go with it. And so I continue to work primarily in glass because there's a lot of stuff to explore. It becomes a responsibility. I like to try to represent my tribe and my community. That's why, I don't dabble in other people's cultural style. When I do that, it's always collaboratively. So I'm trying to bring people over into the glass world by collaborating with them and showing an example of what can be done because I have the skills to do it. It's exciting to see because I think that in the end, it sort of reflects a cultural perspective, and in my opinion, what better place to operate from than this connection? You have this history, and I feel like if I'm successful with my work, I would just be inspiring the next generation to do something in their own way. It was a few years ago I had my first solo show here at the Museum of Glass, but I'm currently working on an exhibition called Raven in the Box of Daylight. It's going to be opening up in 2017. As you walk through the exhibition, you'll get sort of a thread of the story about Raven, who brought the sun and the moon and the stars to the world and gave it to mankind as a gift. To make a living as an artist is really pretty special. To sort of solidify in the consciousness of the collectors, people that support the artwork, that glass is an accepted material. I mean, sometimes we have these kind of cultural corrals that we're kept in, in terms of, well, this is traditional and this is contemporary. And I think that we're trying to break down those barriers a bit. Yahoo!
Powder is the smallest size of colored glass available and can be very versatile when used in the creation of artwork. Powder is made by crushing frit in a ball mill. When used like frit, the powder is rolled through, and the heat of the gather is enough to melt the color onto the surface. Powder can also be sifted onto the outside of a bubble or gather to create various densities of pigmentation and shading. The application of different color powders can create both abstract designs and naturalistic color patterns, such as the skin of animals. Powder can be melted smooth or left dry and cakey on the surface of the piece. The color in glass comes from adding various materials to the mixture of raw ingredients called batch. Most of the colorants are compounds containing some kind of metal. For example, adding cobalt to clear glass creates a deep blue. Tin and antimony can be used to create white glass, and gold chloride can produce a rich red or pink-colored glass. Colored glass is melted in furnaces, just like clear glass, and then is usually rolled into bars for storage and easy application. In order to apply color bar to a bubble, we first need to preheat the color to approximately 950 or 1000 degrees Fahrenheit in a color oven or garage. Once warm, the color is then picked up on the end of a punty rod using a little bit of clear glass as a support. The color is then heated in the 2300 degree glory hole to soften it and make it malleable, while another artist creates a small bubble of clear glass on a blowpipe. Once warm, the color is dropped over the clear bubble, and then using a variety of hand tools or the steel marver, the color is rolled back over the clear in an even layer. This process is called dropping color, or creating a color overlay. Depending on the project, that bubble is then usually gathered over with clear glass and blown into the final form. The finished product may appear to be all made from colored glass, but when viewed in cross-section, we can see that there is only a thin layer of color sandwiched between many layers of clear glass. Charging the furnace is what we call filling the furnace up with glass. Glass cullet is washed clean and loaded into tubes for filling. Here at the museum, we don't use recycled bottles. Instead, we melt cullet that has been specifically designed to make blown glass art. The primary ingredient in glass is silica sand, or silicon dioxide. The other two main ingredients are soda, or sodium oxide, which lowers the melting temperature, and lime, or calcium oxide, the stabilizer. Once the cullet is loaded into the 2300-degree furnace, a rake is used to level the glass for even melting. The furnaces at the Museum of Glass hold approximately 1,000 pounds of clear molten glass and run continuously 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
To fabricate a scale model float plane out of glass takes tremendous effort. Figuring out the exact proportions of the propeller, the length of the body versus the wingspan were all extremely difficult. The Legacy project started off as a collaboration between the Museum of Glass and the Murdoch Charitable Trust. We were commissioned to design and fabricate a glass airplane to commemorate Jack Murdoch. We started by overlaying two contrasting colors of glass that would later show the design elements in the plane. We're working with the glass at a temperature of over 1500 degrees. We create a small color cup to allow for a nice even distribution of color. The colored cup was then stuffed with clear glass to give us enough mass to make the body or the fuselage of the plane. Glassblowing is a team effort. Here at the Museum of Glass, we're unique in that this team has been working together for over 10 years. Each member of our team played a specific role in the creation of the plane. We use a variety of tools to shape and design the body. As you can see here, we're using some cork paddles to rough it out. The body is then transferred to yet another blowpipe so we can finish up the tail of the fuselage. Using those same cork paddles, we give the bottom of the plane a gentle curve before it's put away. After the plane is finished being formed, it's put away into an annealing oven to cool for several days. Once the fuselage was made, we moved on to making the pontoons. We decided we needed to fabricate a steel mold to allow us to make multiples. In order to have the pontoons match the plane, we used the same white color bar. This time, it is solid. The solid glass is then heated up to approximately 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and then it's pressed into a steel mold. The pontoons are then put into another annealing oven to cool down. In our cold shop, the fuselage of the plane is now being ground or sanded down to remove any unwanted material. We then taped off the plane, and using our sandblaster, we revealed the tail numbers, the windows, and the pinstripes on the fuselage of the plane. The sandblasting process is often very rewarding, as the color is quickly revealed, bringing life to the aircraft. After being sandblasted, the planes were then returned to the cold shop to be cleaned up and polished. The wings, the vertical and the horizontal stabilizers were all water jet cut out of handmade sheet glass, again made from the same white color to match the body of the plane. Once the glass parts were finished, we fabricated a small steel structure to hold the pontoons to the body of the plane. The nose cone was turned on a lathe while the propeller was carved out of a sheet of steel to make a fully functional propeller. Now that we have all the parts of our plane, it was brought back to the cold shop where the assembly began. The vertical and horizontal stabilizers were notched out to fit the tail of the plane, while the wing was glued into place. The gluing process takes many hours. We start with 2 clean surfaces, apply the glue, and it sits for over 72 hours before a full cure. It was an honor and a challenge to work on the legacy project for the Murdoch Charitable Trust.
It's a baby monster. Pip is a baby monster that loves to smile and laugh. Even though he's little and cute, he gives a big cry. Also, Pip loves food, especially bananas. He will eat any speck of food in sight.
Totally amazing. And then especially if the pieces of art go traveling around, other kids will see, oh my gosh, I could do that too. You know, it's not just somebody else that, you know, they did it, you know, I couldn't do that. Absolutely not. Anyone can do this. And I think that's what it shows the kids.
Maybe not everybody can win though.
But, and
I think it's gonna stand up there with one of the coolest things that a museum has ever done.
What is it, a cucumber all dressed up for a night on the town? That's pretty ridiculously funny.
The funnest part about this project is how fresh the ideas are coming from the kids who they have no idea of glass blowing techniques. They don't care.
Nobody saw this coming. We'd make one piece and it was given to the family. And then we realized, well, wait a second, there's something more here. We started to get more drawings, more interesting drawings, and it really kind of snowballed a little bit.
Bacon Boy was special. The hat almost looks like a frying pan.
Maybe he's wearing a frying pan.
shows that, you know, there's an artist in all of us, I think. So, and it's human nature to be creative. So I think we lose that as we get older sometimes, and it's cool to see this pure creative nature that children possess. So I think it's cool to share that with the rest of the world, hopefully. So.
Thank you for supporting Kids Design Glass.
My name is Henry Johnson. I'm 12 years old. I enjoy music and art. The week the Museum of Glass opened, my parents became members, and I've been going there since I was born.
Henry's our oldest child, and from the beginning he liked to design things because he would come up with plans and build things and figure out how things work.
Exposing our kids early to art is a big priority in our family.
I really enjoyed the Glass Museum at all ages. Like when I was younger, it was just cool. So there's like fire and
not only exposing them to art, but also to actually watch real artists making art.
Kids Design Glass is a program at the Museum of Glass where you're able to draw a picture and give it a name and a story about it. And then if your drawing is selected, it will be made into a piece of glass. Ever since I could really move a pen in my hand, I've been just doing drawings for the Kids Design Glass.
The kids, they get into the studio and they've got to come up with this idea because they really want their design to be chosen. You know, it's helping trigger that initiative for kids. It's really making them think differently instead of something being spoon-fed to them. they're coming up with this original idea.
How many kids design glass drawings do you think you've done?
30 to 40 drawings at least. Yeah. I was talking to him. He thinks it's a lot more than that, but I would say probably around 50.
Like 124 or something. Every time I go to the glass museum, to get there, I go over the bridge, and I always walk under the bridge of glass.
Bridge of glass is secretly a car. I think that's what it is.
Kind of just looked at the bridge of glass and thought, what else could it be?
It was just out there, you know, that if you kept doing it, maybe, maybe you get chosen.
Glass. I'm going to put all these, I'm assuming these are all the little things.
Gabe told me that they're like excited that it would be like fun to make the pieces of glass in the bottom of the bridge.
And I think there's a lot of mystery about art for kids. They only see the final product. You know, they might go to a museum, but they don't really know how it became the piece that it is. And I think it's the neatest thing I've ever seen any museum do.
I think the coolest part of them creating my piece was they take clear glass, roll it in different color shards to create the pieces on the bottom of the bridge of glass.
So they're treating these kids who did these designs like world-class glass artists. Like they're the visiting artists, and they might be 12, but they're the artists, and they want to make sure that they're doing it exactly how that child envisioned it.
My drawing being selected for the Kids Design Glass program gave me confidence and pushed me to become like part of the Jason Lee Middle School glass program.
I knew it.
What do you think, Henry?
Henry. I knew it would have worked.
He's so excited. So he's going to start doing the Hilltop Artist program, where Monday through Thursday after school he'll go and he'll work in the hot shop.
Really enjoy like watching glass come together into pieces of glass, and like to be able to do that myself. I really wanted to like fulfill that.
It all started with that exposure, really young, to the glass museum.
It'd be really easy for a museum to only focus on professional artists, not get involved in the kids, but the Museum of Glass is creating many generations of people who love art and are connected and feel like art's something they can do.
Most people see Hilltop as a program. I see it more as like a family. I'm Schunke. I'm originally from California, but I'm here in Tacoma now. Well, at first, I was a little stoked that we like moved, but then like reality kind of hit me, and like I kind of thought, I can't see my family anymore, and like it was kind of depressing at first. In California, art to us was just basically like drawings and paintings and stuff. We didn't see any sculpting or anything like that, and especially out of glass, I've never heard of that. When I saw it, I was like, I'm getting in this program as soon as possible. They said I could sign up, and I started the next day.
Hilltop Artists is a nonprofit organization founded in 1994 with the help of Dale Trehuli. It started off in a small wood shop and now provides hot glass instruction to over 550 kids annually. I'm Trenton Kiocho, and I'm from Tacoma, Washington, born and raised. I was kind of getting in trouble with my mom, so she had me move in back with my dad in Tacoma. And first day of school, we were signing up for classes, and I noticed they had a glass program, and I was kind of curious about it. I signed up for that class, and I've just been doing it ever since that day. Right now with the program, I'm actually a part-time instructor with the production team. So our hope with the Hilltop Artist program is that the kid leaves with a little bit more self-esteem, a little more confidence to pursue their goals, whether it be glass blowing or anything else that they'd want to pursue. Our mentors at Hilltop focus on increasing student academic success and interpersonal success. We all have our own issues outside of work, but I think for those 3 hours we get to come together and be a part of a team and be a part of something else. So our focus this week at MOG is to produce a body of work for our upcoming luncheon fundraiser that will happen October 7th. And all this money that we're going to raise from this luncheon is going to go back into the program to help fund the cost.
There's 3 of us on the floor, 3 people from the MOG Hot Shop team, and we're using the kids to help us make their auction pieces.
Just in these 2 days, I've learned so much. Just they help you. If they see something they can help you with, they're like, oh, do this. I'm rolling up cane, and they told me, hey, roll up cane towards you, hotter, keep it. Simple stuff that I probably thought about in my head, but I'm like, oh, I don't know if I should do this. Might be doing it wrong. But then they're like, do this, and it becomes easier. There is no limit to your imagination. You can do anything. Glass is just an example of it. There's always new techniques. People always say, oh, there's nothing new. There's always something new. In glass, I can work with somebody one day, I can learn a new technique.
I wish there was something like that when I was growing up. I could have really used this, and now for me to be, on the side where I'm actually helping these kids, it's really rewarding, and I've never felt like I was a role model, and I definitely feel like I am now. So I'm trying to take that and own it, I guess.
When I see the pieces in the museum, it kind of makes me want to be that person. I want someone to see something of mine and be shocked and surprised in how it's so detailed and colorful and big.
I'm Catherine Gray, and I live in Los Angeles, California. I'm originally from Toronto, Canada. Lived and worked in Seattle for about 5 or 6 years, And then the last 15 years, I've been teaching at Cal State San Bernardino in California. I love my job, I love teaching, but I feel sometimes pretty isolated from other glass blowers and glass artists, so the chance to come here and work with a bunch of really skilled, amazing artists and craftspeople is a really great opportunity for me to kind of just get that injection of technique and inquiry and support, you know, I sometimes long for. I mean, I have really great students, don't get me wrong, but I feel like when I'm working most of the time, I'm a teacher a lot. And so it's really great to be here and just, actually be a student too, like to be able to learn from other people and see how other people do things. I miss that in my job, so this is really awesome. Also just having a big crew like this really is, opens a lot of doors for not just scale, but just trying different things. Like I have a pretty finite kind of amount of time and, smaller glory hole and all that kind of stuff that can be limiting at times. And so having access to all of that here can really be pretty awesome.
Oh, good. Did my fingernails. I'm Dick Marquis, Richard Marquis. I live in the Pacific Northwest. I've been 30 years on Whidbey Island. Been like 46 years blowing glass, and I have a fairly short span of attention, so I keep changing what I'm doing. And over that period of time, I've probably made, a couple thousand objects, and they don't often relate to each other. The last few years I've been working on this process called granulari, which is this lumpy, Italian lumpy ware. And that's what I've been working on the last few years, and that's what I'm sort of concentrating on here at the museum.
And here we go, rolling up the marine around that glass tube.
This has every color I've got over there, so it's a compatibility test. It's actually making something I need.
Okay.
Yeah. That'd be the clear. Yeah, I think it'll only probably be like this size. Granulari in Italian means granular or lumpy. And what it is like this piece here, it's some hard glass, hard white glass surrounded by a soft glass of another color. And when you blow it out, it just becomes bumpy. It's sort of like blowing chewing gum with BBs in it. And BBs stay hard. And that's what I've been working with for a long time. And then it's something that's not exactly pretty. That's one reason I'm interested in it.
Yeah.
Very odd object, like a studded tire.
Yeah.
All my whole life I've collected things, and I've never had enough money to collect really nice things. So I sort of have this collection of beat up objects that I like to arrange and play with. And sometimes I try to make, something that's really lowbrow, try to turn into more of a highbrow item. It's hard to tell by some of the shapes I make that I actually know a lot about classic forms, because I've been there and done that. Now I'm interested in doing these more like primitive shapes, primitive forms. Okay, these guys are very cartoony. They're called cartoon cars, and they just sort of developed from some of the other work I did.
And here we go. Get our visiting artist,
want to make anything here that I can't make myself. So I'm sort of limiting the scale I'm working at, and I'm just trying to streamline a couple processes I've been working on and experiment with a couple other shapes I'm interested in. And I've only made one of these things before putting it together hot. And so, and it was really hard to do, so I'm trying to streamline that process and see if we get 2 or 3 good ones. That's the most important thing. Then I'm making some other shapes that I'm interested in working with later. I won't finish anything here at the museum. It'll all be taken back to my shop, and I'll add things to it, and I'll knock back the shiny glass and make it duller, and just sort of, I'm not sure what I'll do with it. No, let's just sort of see what happens. Okay, now we'll torch that area. Good. I spent the last 9 days at my shop making the cane, preparing for this. And if we were really efficient and went really fast, we'd go through it all in 3 days. I don't want to go through it in 3 days. I want it to last a while. It looks good. Somebody should suit up. So we're going to sort of, make sure we make really nice ones. Nice job, yeah. Nice job.
My name is Michael Schunke. I'm from West Grove, Pennsylvania. So it's a very, very small town, about an hour southwest of Philadelphia. My work as an artist who works with glass, the foundation of it is really in vessel making and in traditional craft. I learned to blow glass about 22 years ago. About a year into when I started, I had the opportunity to work with Lino. So the foundation of the actual process there is rooted in that Venetian technique. So I have this this link to craft and tradition that I don't want to break. I don't fight it, it's part of who I am. I'm a goblet maker as well as a vessel maker, and I'm always going to do it. It's a big part of who I am. The inspiration for the Crucible series comes from a number of different places, but I spent a lot of time this past year in the city of Chicago. I went over to Millennium Park and I saw the bean. I think most people are familiar with the bean. And I had seen pictures of it, but I had never seen it in person. And it was really kind of an extraordinary experience because it was this object that was doing 2 things. It was drawing people in while simultaneously reflecting out. And that was a tipping point for me in thinking about these sculptures because the interiors of these, the cores, is something that is either mirrored or very highly polished brass that reflects outward. So it's the interior of the vessel being reflected outward and also reflecting whatever imagery or engraving is on the exterior of the vessel. Zeros about things being neutral and just trying to stay even-keeled about things, or tally marks. I did one when I turned 40 years old. I was thinking about, time just moving by. That one's pretty big. That one's like that. in the series that I'm working on this week at the museum, the Crucible series, I feel these things are decidedly contemporary sculptures or objects, whatever you'd like to call them. But in the vessel making part of them, or the veil part of them, the exterior, is rooted very heavily in traditional glassmaking. While I'm pretty specific about how the shapes should look, I'm not really tied to them being exactly, you know, this size or this curve or this proportion. It just gives us a starting point of what I want to look for. You know, and I think as most people who are like rooted in a craft background might be, that these curves need to be constant, you know, no flat spots on the curves. You know, this can't be like that. And then conversely on this one that's more like an hourglass or a cooling tower, the shape has to always be moving in. So I'm constantly, you know, doing that, and then when we're on the putty and finishing the shape, Josie will actually assist me in, you know, looking at it.
Welcome everyone to the Museum of Glass. Happy Friday, everyone. Hope you're enjoying a wonderful week. We sure are here at the museum. Today's the third day of a 5-day residency with our visiting artists, Michael Schunke and also Josie Gluck. Now, Michael is considered today's gaffer. Gaffer is our fancy term for the person in charge. Now, our visiting artists together own and operate Vetrovero glass blowing and design studio. So throughout the process, you can always hashtag them at Vetrovero or even following them on their own social media platforms. The Museum of Glass will do some as well. But for today's demonstration, the best view will be the top balcony. As it slows down, I'll go ahead and join our audience up there. If you want to have a conversation, that is a good time. But we are focusing on the artwork on the pedestals. So this is what we're going to create. We start off by breaking our goblet into 3 elements. Our stem, the center stem, the actual base, and the cup. This skull has taken us approximately a little over an hour to make. We started it before we took our lunch, but we didn't have enough time to complete it. So right now, the team in the center are just finishing up with the final details. We'll notice this floating piece of equipment in our studio. It's called the garage. It's about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's a temporary place where we can store the glass and keep it warm. So this is essentially our glass sitter in the studio. So Josie Gluck, our second visiting artist, is in the gray on our center. Real quickly, let's just understand what we are working with. The temperatures in front of us do vary, but the one in the center is approximately 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. So our visiting artist wants to transfer the skull onto a different rod. By transferring it, we can just begin to work on the top half of the skull and clean up any residue that's left in that general area. And when they start the next piece, I really want to follow along with the team. It just happens to be that this demonstration is kind of going to start right in the center of it. But as soon as we gather more glass on a different rod, I like to just break down everything we see here in front of us. So my name is David. I'm your MC here today. I've been working with glass for nearly 10 years here in our Tacoma area. So Tacoma is very unique when working with glass. It's taught in our public schools. We're one of the only places in the country to do so. and I'm more than happy to share my knowledge and experience about glass making. Well, it looks like that school is completely finished. We'll follow Ben, our member of the Museum of Glass, and we'll start it up. Again, if you have questions, if I lose you, let me know. Raise your hand, shout my name. I love questions. At any time, you let me know. Let's follow Ben on our right side with the blue t-shirt. He's going to be our starter. He's going to begin today's process by dipping a steel rod inside of our furnace. Our furnace is holding up to 400 pounds of this color we see on our pedestals. Now, usually here at the museum, we only melt clear glass. And we melt clear glass so we can use all the colors of the rainbow. But today is a very unique week. I've been looking forward to this week for nearly a year now. Our visiting artist is one of the best American glass makers, and the technique that you're going to see here is very similar to the techniques that are done in Murano, Italy. So our visiting artist has been trained by some of the best masters of glass. So when you have an artist like this, at this caliber, you can make exceptions. For this reason, we've made colored glass here at the museum. So we took, it's metals in the periodic table that create colors in glass. So we just took a little bit of a natural earth called neodymium, a natural earth oxide, and it was placed inside of our furnace, mixed around, and we're left with 400 pounds of this colored neodymium glass. When we're done with this residency, we'll go back to melting clear glass. This is the first time we've ever made glass, or ever made colored glass, since opening in 2002. So we have a starting bubble. It's hard to believe this, but nearly everything you see in the gallery, in the store, looked exactly like what we have on the end of this rod, just a bubble. These next few steps is where the process really begins to branch out to all the other different type of techniques, but they always start identical. Well, we dip another layer of molten material. This is how we're going to determine the size of our piece. The more dips you see us take, essentially the larger or the thicker our piece will become. For our piece, we will only take 2 gathers of glass, and we are going to start off by creating the stem, where it stands on. Now, if you're sitting on this end of the studio, we'll constantly come over to this end because of our pipe cooler. It's just a little bit of cold water, and that can in turn cool down the rod for us, allow our left hand to slide closer to the glass, and act as a counterbalancing point, like a fulcrum in a seesaw. Here we're going through some thinning. We're just removing a lot of maybe some of thick glass that may be at the tip. It can also be that we're removing impurities that we may have noticed while gathering and collecting the material. Oftentimes, we get asked, how much air do you need to blow through the blowpipe? Now, you don't have to be an opera singer. You don't have to play an instrument. As long as you're alive and breathing, you can blow glass. So it's more about the heat of the glass and the pressure that we're blowing. But usually, we blow about the same air pressure you use to blow out a candle. Glass is more like cellophane. As you blow, it gets thinner and thinner rather than just bursting or popping like a balloon. if you like to hear some of this communication, the top balcony is an excellent place to just hear what's going on. Sometimes we're not communicating. It's because glass making can sometimes be nonverbal communicating. And that just takes years and years of anticipating what's going to be happening next as a glass maker. Welcome to the museum, by the way. My name is David. If you have questions, let me know. I love questions. I'll be roaming around, not too busy. Hello. So there's so many different shaping tools a glass maker can choose from, but some of these tools will write on beeswax, and that's beeswax to prevent us from scratching or scoring the surface of the glass. Rather, we'll just be slipping and sliding. Do we have a question at the top? Anytime we see wood being utilized in the studio, we can just assume it's made out of some form of fruit wood, like cherry wood, contains more moisture, and just lasts longer. Ooh, transitional bits now. Okay, so our next step will be our ovolio. The ovolio is the fancy kind of hourglass transitional bit that we see on each goblet. It's on the bottom of the cup and also on top of the stem. That's our fancy term. But we start off by making this in two parts. The first part is more like a landing pad, and then the second part will actually produce the hourglass shape. And here in a little bit, I would love to share with you a diagram on our big screen once we have it loaded. It explains each part of a goblet, and it will break them down, a diagram. And we'll get that up in our big screen in a bit as we're preparing to transfer our piece onto another rod. And on the big screen right now, this is the finished artwork when completed. On Wednesday, we created the pieces that are sitting on our pedestals. Yesterday, that artwork is sitting in our cooling oven on our left-hand side. Here in a little bit, we'll go ahead and open them up, and we'll bring out all our tops, and we can join them together. All right, question? How do we make the colors? Okay, so color is made by adding different metal oxides of the periodic table of elements. Different metals produce different colors. And so we took a little bit of our rare earth metal, placed it inside of our furnace, and now we have 400 pounds of that, this beautifully colored glass. And this is a neodymium color, so depending on the light source will dictate its color. Right now, to us, it looks purple, but I've noticed when we bring it over to the side of the museum, it looks blue, and then it can even turn transparent gray under a fluorescent light. So this is a subtle detail that only our audience in the top balcony will kind of notice this. What we're going to do is we're going to thicken the very bottom of it. As we can see in our examples on our pedestal, that lip has been thickened and the color has also gotten a little denser. That's just by folding the lip inwards. So our stem may be already thin, but we're all still going through a thinning procedure. What we're doing is pulling thick glass. We're going to trim that off. We're going to cut it right off like leather. This is I think is one of the most satisfying parts about glass making is always the trimming process, and hand-blown glass will always go through this procedure. Now this glass that ends up on the ground can be reused. Since it is this color, we can't just toss it back into our furnace. The only thing we need to worry about is it may have contaminated with some of the dirt or debris that's on the ground, but it is reusable. And here at the museum, all our recycled glass can be reused and is sent off to our mobile studio. So we have a small studio that travels around the US. It's packed up on a semi-truck and it educates our audience about glass making. That studio runs on 100% recycled glass coming from the museum. So we got rid of our blowpipe, so we lost the ability to introduce air that way. But we still have a soffietto. It's a metal straw with a cone flare at the end. It stands for little breeze in Italian, by the way. But this is how we can introduce more air without a blowpipe. So if you're thinking about heading out, we're getting closer to assembling everything. After this foot is done, it will join our skull in the garage, and then we'll get started on the actual bowl. I think the bowl is probably one of the faster pieces that Michael can make. And we want to point out, with using our special color, we're also ensuring that we're not leaving any air bubbles on the surface of that gather or of our oven. That's because the next time Ben goes in there, if that bubble's right on that surface, we just ruined our core. We'll throw it away, start all over again. There's been numerous times where we've noticed an impurity in the glass. So what? We'll just toss it, start again. We don't like to settle here at the museum. If it doesn't look right, it's not going to look right in the end product. So Ben on our right-hand side has started our cup. So we have our starting bubble. This is the start to nearly everything that you see out in the gallery. It's hard to believe, but this is how they all begin. This is where they begin to branch off after this gather of glass. We let that core cool down just for a few quick seconds, ensuring that we can gather a little bit more glass and, more importantly, maintain control over that hot layer. When we see that move happen, it happens for a few different reasons. A, we may have gathered too much glass. B, there may be an impurity on that surface of the glass, and we can let go of that impurity. And C, we're left with a symmetrical shape after. So there's 3 reasons why we can do that step. You guys have amazing seats, so you're all set. You're good, all right? Welcome to the museum, by the way. My name is Dave, and I'm your MC here today. Hope you're all having a fantastic Friday. It's Friday. You guys ready for the weekend, right? I'm sure you guys don't have school today either, right? Days off, right on. How are you enjoying your day? You guys having a good day? Yeah? So have you ever been here before? No? This is your first time? Ooh, this is a fantastic place to learn about glass. So, yeah, I know it's just glass, right? But our glass is not your ordinary just glass. Our glass is a high-end glass. It's made just for us. It's being brought to us from North Carolina. Do you guys play Minecraft? No Minecraft. So in Minecraft, you use sand to make glass, but here we don't just use sand. We use a higher end of sand. And it's mined. It's being mined from a mountain. That's how fine it is. Welcome. Thanks for stopping by. And it looks like we're going to see our first glimpse at our tops that were created yesterday. All night they've been cooling down slowly, making their way back to room temperature. This is one of those stages where you just have to be patient. If you rush opening the doors, a quick breeze can shock the molecules, and then they can just snap or break. The pieces that we see on our pedal stools were made on Wednesday, and we were able to speed up this residency because our visiting artist created some of these skulls back in his home studio. All right, so I just want to introduce a little bit about what's going on here. We are creating the top cup of our goblet. This is the last element. This is a perfect timing. If you're thinking about heading out, I just hold on to your seat for a little bit longer. This demonstration will be wrapping up here soon. Directly in front of us, we're using a reheating chamber. It's called a glory hole. I have no idea where that name comes from. That's just the name it's been given for hundreds of years. I just know that it's at 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. Every time I try to heat up my lunch in here, it never works out. It always just burns. But hey, I figured out a better way to heat up my lunch. Either way, unlike other chambers, this one is turned off at night to just save some energy. But again, it's so hot that anything that enters inside, we can pretty much say goodbye to. Now, standing next to our glory hole, we also have our furnace where our glass is being brought out. Our material is about the same temperature as lava flowing out of a volcano. And our furnaces will be left on all year around, 365 days a year. It looks like our gaffer, Michael Schunke, we refer to our visiting artist that takes a seat at the center as our gaffer. The term gaffer is the person who's in charge, calling all the shots. Right now, we are going to create an ovolio. The ovolio is a transitional fancy hourglass shape. And this is made in two parts. The first part is just a patty with a small mountain, small point. The second mass that Sarah is gathering right now will become the actual stem of the hourglass. Now, our gaffer has also called for a punty. But what's the punty? The punty is the transfer rod. Some glassmakers will also refer to it as a pontil. But here on our right-hand side, Ben is in charge of creating the punty. So although Ben is creating our punty right now, our Museum of Glass Hot Shop staff, they change roles. Oh yeah. Notice that down in our center of our studio, we can wave to Courtney Branham in the black t-shirt. He's playing a very important role right now. We have a question in the middle. Oh, okay, it's a very loaded question you just asked. So let's break it down a little bit, okay? So there's so many different ways that you can become a glassmaker if you're referring to your little ones. Here in Tacoma, we're extremely lucky because glass blowing is taught in our middle schools and high schools. So if you attend Tacoma Public Schools, you can be part of this glass blowing community. The program is called Hilltop Artists. You can look online for more information. Besides programs like this, there's also different glass making studios. Just down the street, there's 2 studios less than 10 minutes away. You can go to work in one of these studios. Starts off maybe sweeping floors, but eventually you work your way up to the top and become a gaffer. Now, our 2 visiting artists down here, or at least Michael Schunke in the center, has worked with glass for 30 years. Now, both of our visiting artists hold an MFA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. So you can go to school to become a glassmaker. It is one route. You're more often taught the more artistic side of glass than the craftsman side of working with glass. So it depends on what you're trying to do with the material. I would recommend you to different places. That's a beautiful top, Josie. So these tops were made yesterday, and we're trying to find the corresponding cup as well. They're also still a little warm to the touch. Essentially, all the artwork that's created here belongs to our visiting artists. We will just ask for one piece that will remain here in our permanent collection, either be shown in our top balcony or out in the main hall. I think we're nearly ready to begin the assembly portion of everything. I see quite a few members out in our audience, so before we start, I'd like to just thank all our members that we see out in our audience. Thank you so much. We appreciate your support here at the museum. With that said, let's get started on the assembly. In Venetian traditional glassmaking, the final rod is always placed on the inside of the cup. So right here. And that's where our transfer rod will be placed on our cup here. Josie Gluck, our second visiting artist, we have her Instagram written down as well if you'd like to tag her, is in charge of creating the punty. Now this punty needs to be quite special. It needs to be as strong as possible while being as weak as possible at the same time. So the way we're going to produce this punty is by heating the very tip of it to make it extremely hot. We're going to make it weak by rolling into our porous brick. By rolling into our porous brick, we're ensuring that not all of that glass will make contact with our cup. And that's how we're going to make it that perfect mixture of weak and strong. For this next portion, if you like to show your friends, your family, something awesome you witnessed here at the museum, you may want to start hitting record on your smart device. And you can always, or more than welcome to take as many photos and videos as you want. All we ask is you tag the Museum of Glass and also Vetro Vero. With that said, we'll hold off to our questions and we will return when the assembly is complete. Well, our final and last step will lead us to the right-hand side of the studio. So your right-hand side, directly below me sits our annealer. The annealer is the oven that will eliminate the stress in the glass by slowly cooling back to room temperature. Right now it's sitting at 840 degrees Fahrenheit, and it'll be the home of everything that's produced here today. If left out in the open, the ambient air will just shock the molecules into breaking and cracking. So overnight, our glass will cool down, and around this time tomorrow, we can open our annealer. Beautiful putty. Can we give this team a round of applause? Oh, what a fantastic job. Let's give our two visiting artists a round of applause, Michael Schunke and Josie Gluck. This residency will conclude this coming Sunday at 2 p.m. with a lecture given by our visiting artists. There they will explain about the artwork that was explored here at the museum. We hope to see you all later on in the near future. Don't forget that one of these pieces will remain here at the museum. If you would like to see some other pieces, there is a showing right now at the Vaytree Gallery, just down the street from the Seattle Art Museum, where you can see some more of Michael Schunke's artwork. Now, as we transition over, there's still so many parts that need to be made. As we see, this is really the tip of the iceberg, as the top will still need to be produced, and I believe that may be our next step. I can't wait to see one of these in our private collection. Oh no, the more pictures, the better. And under different colors, under different lights, this color will change. Under a fluorescent, it will look more of a grayish color. Even on the sides of the museum, using some of our different lights scattered around, we've noticed that there's also a blue color tint that can be seen with this. This is very unique. The museum does not make color. This is our first time making color since opening in 2002. So as we transition over, we just ask for a few minutes just to make sure everyone's ready. So we are working on creating a raven. Yes, that's right, a raven, just like we see in our examples. Followed by the raven, we'll make the perch it stands on, and then the actual cup to be placed. When we're making the raven, we're gonna make all the different parts. So first we're starting off by making the tail, then we'll make the wings, then we'll make the body, and then we can assemble. Chamber that we're using to elongate the working time with the glass, sitting at 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. This chamber, there's no glass inside of it, it's just fire and heat. if you have questions, my name is David. I'll be floating around the studio. I already know in a bit I'm just going to hang out in the top balcony. I'll put the mic down, but if you want to hang out for a little bit, have a conversation, have questions, that'll be a good time. Oh, it looks like the tail is complete. We can now move on to our two wings. If you're joining us, we are creating a raven here with our visiting artists, Michael Schunke and Josie Gluck. Together, they own and operate Vetrovero Studio. Which, okay, let's just break down our process down a little bit for everyone since we have some influx of our audience. Anyways, I'll just start off by talking about our equipment and then we'll make our way to Michael and about the process that he's working with. So directly behind me where Michael, our visiting artist, gathered the glass is our furnace. We have 1,000 pounds of our colored glass sitting inside of here. Because of our visiting artists, we've made 400 pounds of this neodymium colored glass. Once we are done with this residency, we will go back to producing clear glass. Since opening in 2002, this is the first time the Museum of Glass has made color. Right beside our furnace, we have our reheating chamber, or glory hole. It's about 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. I have no idea where that name is coming from, by the way, guys. No idea. That's just the term that's been given. Anyways, 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. All this equipment is powered by natural gas. Our visiting artist has been working with glass for over 30 years. His last residency at our museum was in 2011. Now, if you want to see more of these goblets, there is a gallery just north of Tacoma in Seattle called the Vetri Gallery that is showing some of his work right now until the end of the month. It's just down the street from the Seattle Art Museum. Again, the Vetri Gallery in Seattle. the small intense flame that we are using is a mixture between oxygen and propane. It's about 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Essentially, we use this torch to just isolate the heat, the specific area we want to work with. You may ask, yo, David, why don't we just use a reheating chamber since it's super hot? Well, it gets everything hot for this specific reason. We just need to work on that kind of feathering texture. Off to the second one. So our furnace on our right-hand side holds our material now. The basic glass, the raw ingredient, is being mined in North Carolina, or silica. It's coming to us. So our glass that we are utilizing here is not just your ordinary glass. This glass has been specifically formulated for the process we see in front of us, offhand glass making. So down on our left-hand side, we have our clear furnace holding 1,000 pounds. Now, the reason that our glass sticks to the rod is due to its viscosity. Its thickness will allow us to collect it on the end of the rod by rotating the rod. Well, if you have any questions about what's going on, raise your hand or shout my name. I can be right over. If not, you can sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. We are putting together one of our lids that we see spread around the museum on our pedestals. Once we've created all the elements, then we can join everything together and then actually assemble and produce our lid. So we're using these strands of glass. They were made earlier in our residency from our furnace. This is how we're going to, what we're working on right now is the branch that it's standing on right now. So we will first make the branch, and then we will make the body, just to ensure that the proportions will be correct. So using that stringer of glass, we can produce essentially where the feet will be located. So we are going to start another process right now on our right-hand side of the studio, the gentleman with the blue t-shirt. He's going to be utilizing these cooling racks on our shop floor as well. What we're going to do is we're going to produce some cane. Cane is a technique, an Italian technique that we can use to apply lines to the glass. These lines in the end can look vertical, horizontal, twisted, wig-wag, whatever we like. Our first step is to produce the lines. We're going to stretch our massive glass from one end of the room to the opposite and let them cool down on these on this wood to prevent it from picking up any debris or residue from the ground. And we will follow this process along. I want to show you exactly what we're going to be producing. And it's this stuff here. I'm going to walk around with some white material, but it's just a basic line of glass. What will happen is we're going to line a bunch of these canes up together, and then that's how we can apply a bunch of these lines on our glass. And they all start off by producing one of these canes or multiple of these canes. So earlier I walked around with a strand of glass, and we noticed it was white with clear glass around it. I believe this is a canary color, and we are now adding our clear mass around it. Depending how long we want our pole to be and how thick that clear layer should be will dictate the amount of rolls that we take. The project that's going to be worked on the right is different from what we see on the center. This is just prep work for this weekend's demonstration. How hot is it when it comes out? So the glass in our furnace is at 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit, so the same temperature as lava flowing out of a volcano. Well, it looks like this is enough glass to stretch our mass out. It doesn't matter what color we're really working with, it will always look red and orange because of the heat. But as soon as we start stretching the glass and it begins to lose its heat, we'll get a glimpse of the real color. Once again, this material that's produced will be utilized tomorrow. So if you would like to see that demonstration, you can't join us in person, you can always join us online through the web, on our website and YouTube channel. So for this demonstration, I recommend roaming around the museum. The top balcony is a fantastic place to see what's going on. We also have some stunning artwork made from our past visiting artists. When this residency is concluded, one piece will remain here at the museum, either being displayed on our top balcony or in the museum's gallery. And it looks like we're getting ready to stretch our massive glass out. So if you're thinking about heading out, I just would hold on to your seat for a few more minutes as we're beginning to stretch our initial material out. And we're going to follow Ben on this one. We can kind of point out the process of producing cane. Now it's about maximizing our pull, using the most of this material as possible. We're looking for the diameter of a number 2 pencil. Too thin or thicker than that, we'll probably just end up tossing it. The first stretch that we do is the initial diameter. The mask that Ben has, the bright blue shirt, that is how we're going to determine the rest of the diameter. If we speed up, it gets thinner. If we slow down, it gets thicker. And if you miss this one, it's completely fine because we have a lot of poles to get to. Usually when we're making vases or bowls that require these lines, we start off the demonstration by just pulling a few miles of this material. I would say maybe each pole can produce 2 pieces or so, maybe a little bit more, depending on what we're making exactly. So it does vary. Sure, we can make a bunch of cups or we can make one giant piece. Yes, that is glass. So just a few minutes ago, it was very soft and malleable. But at this point, it's quite stiff and fragile. And you may notice that this end right here, it's still a little bright red. But notice the center, it's already seeing that yellow color. That is how we're determining the heat of our glass. Now our tools, our steel tools, are cold enough to just shock the glass by touching them. And this technique only works if you do it immediately after the pull. If you let it rest for a few minutes, this technique won't shock the glass enough. We are currently creating the tail of our raven. It seems like the team has decided to just make another one. This is how you work as a glassmaker. If you notice something doesn't look right, the proportions may be off, maybe an impurity may have snapped, whatever it is, we always take the precaution and just stop, make it again. It's completely fine. Even if there's another piece extra inside of our garage, it's completely fine. We can use it later on if we'd like to. It's just incredible, right? I've been looking forward to this residency for a year since it's been announced. I marked this down on my calendar. I even came to work one day. I wasn't supposed to come into work, just to hang out, see what's going on, and see everything unfold. I mean, you kind of have to when you have one of the best American glassmakers in your studio. And I always pointed out, we don't make color here at the museum. This is a first in art history. We've been open since 2002. It took us that many years to finally create and produce color here. But you know, Oh, so our glass, the way that this glass worked out is we bought our spruce pine glass. So we receive our glass in a powder form, right? That's the batch. What we then took is our neodymium rare ore, and we took it in a mixer. I believe it was, I don't remember the exact ratio, it might have been like 100 to 1 or something like that. Mixed it for around an hour, and then we had our batch that had the neodymium. That was charged inside of our furnace. We baked it for a few days, actually maybe even a week. So this project, we actually started maybe a week and a half ago by clearing out our furnace, making sure that our color was ready. And not that just the color was there, but it was a good quality glass. It wasn't just bubbly or seedy, that we had time to cook it and fully bake it. Exactly. And we've been doing a lot of raking in our furnace, of course, to minimize any impurities. So this colored glass we were just referring to, it's made out of it's made by adding neodymium, which is a rare earth metal. We took that neodymium and we mixed it with our batch, so our powdered glass. We mixed it for an hour. I don't remember the exact ratio, but that produced us our batch of glass that was then loaded inside of our furnace. What's up? Are we gonna blow up any glass? Oh my God, you're looking to blow glass. Okay. I gotta admit to you, glass blowing is very misleading. That term glass blowing is what's stuck with our medium, but it doesn't always accurately represent what we're doing. A better term would be glass sculpting or even glass making, but it just happened to be that that's the term that stuck with us. We're not going to be glass blowing just quite yet. We're first going to make all the elements, and then we will blow glass to make the cup. So in a little while, you have to give us some time. It's so unfortunate that our medium has that name glass blowing, and audience sometimes expect to see that process everywhere, and it's really, even the blowing process, although it's very critical, it's only like 15 or 20% of the demonstration. A lot of it is setting the bubble up, shaping it. The small flame we are using is approximately or well over 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're just using this torch to really just isolate the heat in that specific region. And for our audience that's joined us a little later, on our left-hand side, we're gathering a little bit of our clear molten material. Our glass that we're using here at the museum is not your ordinary glass. It's being brought to us from North Carolina. Out in North Carolina, they are mining a quartz mountain, which produces the basic raw silica that we use. And there's different formulations of glass everywhere in the world. We're most commonly used to working with soda lime glass. This makes up maybe all the glass that we come into contact, from our eyewear, from our phones, to our glass, and even automobile glass. It's all that soda lime glass. Oh, wow, that's a large gather of glass here. So as our visiting artist, Michael Schunke and Josie Gluck assemble the Raven, we are going to be producing some cane. Cane is these lines in glass, but these lines ultimately can end up horizontal, vertical, and wigwag, whatever orientation, but the basic lines are always produced using several techniques. The one that we're going to see now is one of the most popular spread around the museum. Even when you enter the hot shop, you'll notice on our center, our showcases, we have some bottles and some vessels made with this stuff here, the cane work. And so essentially, we're going to be producing some of this material. This will then be broken up to maybe four inches or so. And then this stuff will be used later this weekend during the residency. Now, at the same time that Ben, on our right-hand side, our team member here at the Museum of Glass, as that's been shaped, on our far left-hand side, we have another member of our shop team. What Sarah has made is essentially a medallion of glass called a post. This is the opposite handle that we will use to stretch our glass out. Now, when we're making cane, we're trying to maximize the amount of cane that's produced. We're looking for the diameter of a number 2 pencil. And once again, too thick, and it's useless to us. Too thin, and it's useless to us. So we want to maximize the majority of this cane that's produced. And I'm going to dive in deep with this next one as Ben stretches the glass. The first step is to cool down the tip, ensuring that that area does not stretch. This next stretch is the initial diameter. So this is how we're setting the diameter. Once Ben finds his diameter, he hands off the smaller side to Sarah. And he ends up with the thick, or the thick mass. And this is the rod that Sarah originally gathered glass on. And this is how we're going to determine the rest of our material. And you can still see that bright red and orange glow on Ben's side is where the material is being stretched. This end in the center in Sarah's area, it's practically cold. Even if Sarah begins to walk back, we're stretching that hot area. Yes. Does the diameter pull out and draw out evenly? It depends on the speed that Ben walks back. If he wants it a little thinner, he'll speed up. If he wants it a little thicker than his initial push, he can walk a little slower. And it's the thermal shock that's causing the glass to break free with the touch of the cold tweezers. Well, in the meantime that our team was stretching our glass, we've been assembling our Raven, and it's already on its branch. The next step is to put this mass aside. And then we can begin the actual glass blowing part. We can start to produce the lid. So there's a key detail that's going to happen before our raven is complete, and then that's adding a layer of crushed color or crushed glass. By adding this layer, we're able to eliminate the glossiness of the glass and produce more of a matte finish. We do this technique on the raven to also match the skull that's in the center of our goblet. Now, the reason that we apply this powder glass on the ends of the museum is just we're ensuring that all this dust that goes up into the air is sucked out of the museum, and we're preventing it from going into our lungs. this is how we're going to check to see that it fits nicely. We're going to do a price check. As long as this is done fast, won't thermally shock that glass into breaking. And up here, you can hear some of the communication going on between the team. This is the time that we really want to spend to refine everything. We're going to spend so much time on this piece. We want to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success. We've already noticed things about it, so we're just quickly going to adjust until it looks just right. Now, directly below me right now, we have our cooling oven, our annealer. This is the oven where all of our artwork will be placed at to slowly cool down and eliminate any stress in the glass. Now we're getting ready. That was a good sizing there. So we're preparing for the last and final transfer. Now in traditional Venetian style glass making, the cup is always the last thing to be made. The style that we're seeing here is very similar to what is seen in Murano, Italy. So what will occur is we're going to add a punty on the inside of this cup. And once that's done, we can begin to build our goblet. Begin to build our lid. And this is going to be our final piece that is created this afternoon. This is going to conclude our third day of this residency. This residency will continue this weekend and eventually will end this coming Sunday with a lecture given at 2 p.m. If you can't join us for this lecture, you can always join us in person or online through the web. Now, Josie, on our right-hand side, she stepped in front of our furnaces and is gathering a layer of colored glass. Now, this new rod will become our punty. Our punty is the technical term that we glassmakers use to define this transfer rod. Some glassmakers will also call it a pontil, but essentially it's the new handle. This new handle needs to be strong enough to withstand all the pulling, tugging that will occur, while also being weak enough to break with a sudden tap. We're looking for that perfect Goldilocks zone. Now, to achieve it to stick to the glass, we're just going to heat up the very end of it. Now, Josie has also rolled on top of a porous brick. By picking up some of this porous brick, we're ensuring that our punty will remain weak enough to break with a tap. And so here we go. At the same time that this is occurring, on our left-hand side, Courtney Branham in the black t-shirt, he's hanging out in our garage. He is preparing to bring out the first element, or our raven, on top of its perch. So a lot of these steps, the team makes it look very easy. Again, our gaffer, our visiting artist, has been working with glass for 30 years. We are now ready to begin to assemble everything. Now, on the very end of that top, we added a landing pad. We call it a Maurice, but that landing pad will be where our raven will stand. So just by elevating the Raven inside of the garage, we're ensuring that it's absorbing the most amount of heat as possible, since hot air will rise. And that is how you finish up a Friday afternoon. Let's give another final round of applause to our two visiting artists, Michael Schunke and Josie Gluck. This concludes our afternoon live glass blowing demonstration. No, we're good. Okay, we're good. All right, thank you everyone for hanging out with us here. You have a wonderful Friday. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you hopefully tomorrow, if not, at 2 p.m. this coming Sunday for a lecture by Michael Schunke. Talk about the artwork that was explored here at the museum. Thanks for coming in, everyone. You take care.